The Tuesday, June 25th RTD board meeting to order. We are convened as of 5:33 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. This is Chair Eric Davidson speaking, and I would like to thank all of you for joining us this evening. I would also like to respectfully ask everyone who has joined us to remain muted unless you are recognized to speak. As the board has moved to in-person meetings for our monthly gatherings, please note that our committee meetings of the RTD Board of Directors are still being held remotely via Zoom and are being audio and video recorded. Those meeting recordings, along with the unofficial minutes of the meetings, will be posted as soon as practicable on the board's website. Visit rtd-denver.com, and a live stream of this meeting is also available via RTD's YouTube page. During tonight's meeting, we are also providing Communication Access Real-Time Translation, also known as CART. Anyone who would like to access this service should send an email to the RTD board office using the email address rtd.boardoffice@rtd-denver.com, and a link will be provided. Additionally, the CART transcript can be automatically translated into Spanish for anyone who would like access to a live transcript of this meeting in Spanish. At this time, I would now like to ask our second Vice Chair Geisinger to please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and please leave your microphone on. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And at this time, I'd like to ask Director Whitmore, would you please read the land acknowledgement?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The RTD Board of Directors acknowledges that the land on which our buses and trains operate is the traditional territory of the Ute, Cheyenne, Arapaho, and other contemporary tribal nations that are historically tied to these lands. We honor our indigenous elders who have traveled, inhabited, and stewarded these mountains, hills, and plains throughout generations. May this acknowledgement demonstrate a commitment to working to dismantle the ongoing legacies of inequity of the Native and all historically oppressed peoples, and recognize their current and future contributions in the district as we move forward.
Thank you, Director Whitmore. I will now call for the roll and determine the quorum. Treasurer Bouquet.
Present.
Director Broom.
Present.
Director Busick.
Here.
First Vice Chair Catlin.
Here.
Director Deschelle is excused absent. Second Vice Chair Geisinger.
Here.
Secretary Guzman.
Here.
Director Harwick.
Here.
Director Lewis.
Present.
Director Rosenthal.
Present.
Director Rusha. Director Sloan.
Here.
Director Tisdale.
Present.
Director Whitmore.
Present.
This is Chair Davidson. I am here. That is 13 present and 2 absent. We have a quorum. At this time, I'd like to ask Director Busick, would you please read out the Statement of Employee Appreciation?
I will. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Regional Transportation District Board of Directors recognizes that RTD's dedicated workforce is the lifeblood of the agency. Every day, RTD employees do extraordinary things to make lives better through connections. We honor their work of delivering transit excellence, service, and value to the community, especially demonstrated during difficult and stressful moments. May the actions taken by the Board of Directors demonstrate our profound gratitude, commitment, and support toward all RTD employees.
Thank you, Director Busick. This time we'll move to our retiree awards. This was one of the rewarding duties of serving on the board, and is to take a moment of recognition of RTD retirees. And the time has come for us to recognize the employees who are leaving the agency to enjoy their retirement. At this time, I would like to read the names of all employees who have retired since April. Larry Buter, manager, paratransit services, 29 years. Thomas Crunk, bus operator, 16 years. Leo Fauch, senior buyer, 18 years. Sean Hughes, street supervisor, 22 years. Sandra Kerr, manager, transportation operating division, 35 years. Robin Labella, division supervisor, 30 years. Sandra Olivas, material management specialist, 19 years. Art Scott, light rail vehicle instructor, 20 years. Gary Turnquist, structural engineer, 15 years. Unfortunately, as my understanding that our retirees have not been able to join us tonight, but I would like to take a moment of applause and appreciation to thank all of them collectively at once for their hard work, commitment, and dedication to RTD and its customers. I do see that a hand was raised online. That is Director Lewis, and I would like to recognize Director Lewis at this time. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to highlight the efforts of Larry Buter. Larry's work with the Accessoride program. Before I came on the board, I've worked with him for almost 10 years, and I just want to say it was a delight to work with him. Can't say we always agreed on everything, but he was straightforward and gave me straight answers. So even though he may not be there, I just wanted to highlight his tenure with RTD. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Lewis. Next on our agenda is our public participation period, which is open to anyone who would like to address the board. As we have both in-person and remote attendees, in-person comments will go first, followed by those who are participating remotely. For those attending in person, please come up to the podium when your name is called. If you have not already signed up to speak and would like to do so, please approach the podium when I call for any additional speakers. For those attending virtually, if you wish to speak and have not done so, you may raise your virtual hand on Zoom, or if dialed in, press *9 on your phone. Staff will unmute you when it is your turn to speak. If you are dialed in, press *6 to toggle your mute settings. Please bear in mind that by participating in this process, you are being recorded. If you do not wish to be recorded, then your comments can be submitted in writing. If any speaker has documentation or any reference material for the board, or if any member of the public would like to submit written comments, please email those materials to the RTD board office using the email address rtd.boardoffice@rtd-denver.com. During this time, the board will not offer any direct comments or responses. However, if you would like to be contacted regarding your public comment, please email the RTD board office at the same email address noted earlier, rtd.boardoffice@rtd-denver.com. Speakers should please begin their remarks by stating their names, and they will have up to 3 minutes to provide their comments. I will let you know when that 3 minutes has elapsed. We'll go first to our in-person speakers who have signed up, starting with Kathleen Chandler.
Good evening, and thank you very much for this opportunity. My name is Kathleen Chandler, and I do live in District F. I am actually submitting my signatures in the next week or so, so I am running for that position. However, I would like to just comment on the TABOR detaboring issue. I don't know if this is the appropriate time. However, I'm very concerned that as citizens, we are being led astray by the ballot language. It is a tax increase, and I think it should be stated as a tax increase. If you really want to continue to have the public trust, then I think you need to be honest in the language in which that measure is being said. I'm also very concerned that RTD is already receiving millions, if not billions, obviously, dollars, and I'm not sure that the citizenry can really pay much more and still only have less than 5% ride RTD. So I would hope that as you guys consider that, ballot coming up, that you would think about how that language is said on the ballot, because deception is really a big problem within government. We want to trust as citizens our government, and I think we are feeling duped by a lot of the ballot language that's coming from government, and this is a prime example. So thank you very much for your consideration, and I look forward to hopefully being elected and serving the board.
Thank you very much for your comments. Our next speaker who is signed up is Bob Deniger.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I do have a few things I'd like to say, both about tonight's agenda as well as recent events. Unlike yesterday's public speaker, I do not come before you with a faux RTD pin. Neither do I wear a scarlet letter, which, if I recall, was the letter A, which is the district that I'm running for to represent. I'm a big fan of public transit. I think it's hugely important. It's the engine that connects us. I believe very firmly that what we need to do is come together as a community. I was in Houston a month ago, and they have a highway to Katy, Texas, that's 28 lanes. Obviously, we can't do that here. We don't want to do that here. One of the purposes of public transit is to avoid that kind of a nightmare scenario. And I'd also like to point out, as everybody knows, we hit 100 degrees today. And that's got to catch our attention. There's a lot of things we need to do. One of the things we need to do is we need to look at, and we need to take a careful look at, the wisdom of what we formerly referred to as competitive bids. We have an item on the agenda tonight regarding my former employer, Transdev. And that company bought its largest global competitor. The numbers that are on the table, not to exceed, if I'm not mistaken, average approximately $37 million a year without fuel. That's not too much more than it was for the previous 5-year term, 3 years plus 2. I don't see where you're going to solve your people power problem without money. I understand completely that we need to look to the legislature, and I'm proud to say that I've got the support of the 3 co-sponsors of the recent Transit Reform Act, which I opposed. Despite that, I have their support. I think we need to look long and hard at the wisdom of whether there is truly a benefit or a savings to the community privatizing RTD services. Most of the public are not aware that 50% approximately of the fixed route buses are handled by Transdev. Once upon a time, it was First Transit versus Transdev, and that may have had its benefits, but as far as I'm concerned, there should have been an audit. There should have been consideration given to whether there's going to be adequate funds that the people providing the service that is RTD's raison d'etre can afford to live here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the comments. Our next speaker is Emma Griffin.
Hi, thank you for giving me this time to speak. My name is Emma Griffin. I live in District A in the Hale Congress Park area, and I'm a public transit rider and member of Greater Denver Transit. I'm here today to represent the disgruntled sentiment held by many transit riders currently about the chaos surrounding the E and H lines. Between the planned reduced frequency of these lines down to hourly, in combination with the unplanned adverse events for these lines, including 10-mile-per-hour slow zones and sections, as well as safety concerns surrounding tracks, including smoke being seen rising from light rail electrical lines, there are serious questions about the realistic viability of large swaths of RTD's light rail system for anyone with any realistic alternative right now. I have a friend who lives walking distance from the Colorado station. Despite this, she isn't a regular transit rider, but does use the A line to go downtown into the airport. She has a friend visiting for an extended period and let me know excitedly that she's planning on taking her friend on the train near her house to downtown, in her case meaning either the E or H line. Despite being a transit advocate and regular rider, given the current state of the light rail, I advised her not to take the train unless RTD is able to remedy a majority of the issues that have come up recently by the time her friend comes to visit. This was painful coming from someone who actively works to convince people in her life to take public transit more and drive less for the benefit of our entire community. I appreciate RTD collaborating with CDOT to try to bridge some of the gap in service by accepting RTD fare on a portion of one of Bustang's routes serving southern Denver. Ultimately, I think we desperately need more bus shuttle service to fill in the gap left by the E and H lines prior to service changes and the current safety concerns. RTD will permanently lose ridership if our area's transit riders aren't given a safe, reliable, predictable, and frequent means to get to work, home, school, or to spend time with people in their lives. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for your comments. Our next speaker is Joe Meyer.
Before the time starts, can I hand out charts? Is that possible? Or are they already in the packet? I didn't get any confirmation that they made it in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Joe, and I used to ride the E-line every day between Union Station and Dry Creek. The slashing of frequency combined with the surprise slow zones and schedule unpredictability put me back in a car, and I'm now part of the I-25 traffic that we all want to see resolved. I'm asking the board to increase pressure on RTD management to improve transparency, communication, and service as soon as possible. I recognize that regular maintenance and repair is necessary to maintain a safe and reliable operating condition, and accept that it will impact service quality. However, the terrible service we are experiencing is unnecessarily exacerbated by the inability of staff to provide timely, transparent, and frequent communication to the people who rely on RTD. For example, slow zones were not messaged out ahead of time, and the reasoning behind the slow zones was kept secret for far too long. No additional provisions were put in place to provide riders with reliable real-time schedules or workable transportation alternatives. The only offering RTD management has given to riders is, quote, check the app and plan accordingly. That response is an abdication of any responsibility to riders and their experience. For some of the schedule disruptions, Next Ride has been unreliable, which could not have come as a surprise to staff, as the exact same issue was encountered in January when a train derailed near the Southmore station. RTD had months to learn from this and fix the real-time tracking, seriously investigating and clearly communicating to the general public the problems and solutions. Actions and communication like this build trust in the agency and would have better prepared riders to deal with the current situation. Regarding scheduling, I'd like to walk you through my daily trip and ask about opportunities for improvements. I arrive at Union Station in the morning on a B or G train and wait until the next scheduled E-line departure to Dry Creek. That trip from my arrival at Union Station to when I get to Dry Creek takes between 56 minutes to 1 hour and 46 minutes, depending on the train I arrive to Union Station on. For alternatives, I could take the H line and connect to the R, which gets to Dry Creek only 6 minutes earlier than the E line I would otherwise be waiting for. And that total time from arriving at Union Station to arriving at Dry Creek is 1 hour 20 to 1 hour 50. A huge part of that is a 22-minute connection at Dayton between the H and R line. The other option is taking the A line to the R, which is a minimum 1 hour 40 minutes from when I arrive at Union Station on the B or G to when I get to Dry Creek. On Friday, I biked from Union Station to my office faster than everything presented here, other than an on-schedule E-line perfectly timed with an on-time G-line arrival at Union Station, which is a combination only available once per hour. I do have a few suggestions to improve this situation that I would like to see implemented before September if possible. 1, retime the R line to reduce connection time with the H, or increase the R to 15-minute frequency, or run a new route between Lincoln and Dayton and vice versa. 2, run an E-line train directly behind the H. The limitation to the schedule, as I understand it, is single tracking, so 2 trains close together going in the same direction should be viable. This creates 30-minute frequency between DTC and Union Station, which is a huge improvement. And 3, factoring in the delays and slow zones, evaluate if any bus shuttles can realistically provide faster and more reliable service in the areas of the slow zones or between H and R line trains. I and countless others are invested in seeing service improve ASAP between the Tech Center and Union Station. From what I have seen so far, RTD management has not taken that seriously.
Briefly.
Yep. Last line. I'm open to feedback and follow up to further discuss how the situation can be realistically improved. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the comments. We'll now move to Keith Brooks.
Good evening. I'm Keith Brooks. I'm here as a private citizen. You'll see why. planes do not crash, chemicals do not spill, and trains, on fire this time, do not happen purely for technical reasons. This board has been told and will be told in detail technical problems facing the agency. But at the end of the day, culture has to be taken into account. And a culture of secrecy, unaccountability, in the name of penny pinching has taken hold in this agency. I don't expect the board to be rail nerds. There are people you can ask for that. I just ask, please, go after some things when you hear rumors about them. I know there are things the board is not allowed to know, or things the board is not told. Calling someone a politician is usually derogatory, but I say this sincerely. Please, be politicians. Do a bit of schmoozing. Try and figure out what's going on through word of mouth if you are not being told, because so much gets unsaid to this board. I do not know if there's compartmentalization inside senior management, because we don't know what's going on inside management. We know so little. We should not have to do investigative journalism to answer basic questions, but here we are. I appreciate what the board has done to maintain accountability. No one likes to be mean. No one likes to tell someone off, but please, for the riders, do something. Well, more. I understand I'm rambling, but I don't think the board fully appreciates how little they are being told. With line items breaching $1 million, with 48-page budgets when it should be close to several hundred. I know no one wants to go through that, but for us, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is June Churchill.
Thank you, Chair Davidson and esteemed members of the board. My name is June Churchill. I live in District A, and I'm the first co-lead for Greater Denver Transit that you will be hearing from tonight. I will start my comments with matters unrelated to the current light rail issues. We are in very firm support of the debrucing measure. Please vote yes on this. If RTD doesn't debruce, the result will be disastrous permanent service cuts and the possible inability for RTD to take advantage of the incoming state funds from SB 24-230. Second, given state legislative changes this year encouraging more sustainable land use and transit-oriented development, I am very happy to see the Central Park TOD project on the agenda for today, and I want to encourage all of you to vote yes. This development will ensure that instead of having hundreds of empty parking spaces, there will be hundreds of homes filled with transit riders instead. On to the main subject. I know this is a difficult moment for RTD, and I would like to thank all of the operators and staff who are working diligently to keep the public safe and ensure the riders of the district can get from point A to point B reliably and efficiently. In this moment, I think there are two fundamental questions that I want to ground us in about the operational conditions of the light rail. One, what needs to be done right now to reduce impacts on riders? And two, how did it get so bad in the first place? Right now, RTD needs to be laser focused on clear and transparent communication with riders to ensure that members of the public have schedules or real-time information that they can rely upon to use the system. Every transit system has bad days, and RTD right now is a triple whammy of projects affecting our light rail system, namely the coping panels project, downtown loop reconstruction, and the slow zones resulting from wheel burn. In this moment of crisis, RTD needs to have empathy for those affected and work diligently to mitigate impacts through interventions like bus bridges, scheduling communications, and also just generally more creativity as you support riders as they navigate the system. Now on to the second question, which interests me a lot more actually. How did it get so bad in the first place? Undoubtedly, some of this is just bad luck, but that's not the whole answer. We now have the organizational report finalized by Siegel yesterday, which I haven't finished reading completely, but I have been reading it. It's very interesting. Once you take that report combined with the ongoing communications from the PUC, it paints a picture of a district saddled by serious organizational and structural problems, which is doing its absolute best in spite of those problems. I'm sure that once the new state auditor report as public, we will have an even deeper look into the problems with RTD. But as we look, we notice we've got statutory problems, structural problems, and personnel problems. And the moment demands we rise to meet these challenges. It's going to be rough for a bit, but let's work together and ensure such a crisis never happens again. Us here at GDT, we support public transit. We love public transit. We want public transit to be better. The only way we're going to get there is communication, collaboration, and a commitment from everyone that RTD may have problems, but we need to work together to fix them and not live in a world that lacks transparency. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is Richard Bamber.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. So the PUC letter was pretty scathing. I've seen the agency's response. I see there's a certain level of disagreement. But I think nobody can disagree on the PUC's saying twice in the letter the effect this has had on riders, customers, passengers, whatever you want to call them. GDT has questions. You've got them in front of you. You know, we need them answered fully. We've become aware of a document from 2021 that is your track inspection standards. I think that would be nice to get that out into the public domain so we can really see what has changed with the inspections. The second part of our letter talks about you need to do decisive action to solve a crisis like this, and that we don't see. You know, we still hear talk yesterday of massaging schedules, putting extra trains out on the E-line, hoping for the best, you know, muddling through until September. You know, contrast that with, nobody even remembers this anymore, in fall 2022, DTO, concessionaire of the A-line, had a grade crossing at Dahlia, and this crossing had caused them problems ever since the A-line was opened. They took decisive action. They said, we need to drop the A-line frequency to half an hour. We need to run single tracking, it'll be a month. And because they only took away frequency, they didn't take away reliability, they didn't take away punctuality, the A-line still functioned. We've pretty much forgotten about that month as a minor inconvenience. That's what I talk about when I mean decisive action. And the fact that 3 weeks into this, there's no emergency schedule out there really is what I mean. You know, so, I mean, in short, we do see the attempts at transparency. We do see there are staff, you know, who are focusing on this. I do appreciate that. But still, it's still not good enough. I'd like to finish tonight with retiree lists. I mean, I thank anybody who works for RTD, provides service, especially the frontline employees. One name on the list, Gary Turnquist, I'd like to personally commend. I worked with Gary on the Fast Tracks project. He was a very able, capable structural engineer, always happy with a word of advice, always there to help. And I would like to personally wish Gary the best of luck in where life is going to take him next. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak tonight.
Thank you for your comments. Next, we will go to Leslie Welch.
Hi. I would like to thank Chair Davidson and the RTD board for providing the opportunity to provide public comment today. My name is Leslie Welch, and I'm one of the co-leads here at Greater Denver Transit. You probably haven't seen me at a board meeting before, but I help out on a number of behind-the-scenes matters for GDT, including letter drafting. On June 19th, we sent in a letter to CEO and General Manager Johnson with questions and demands regarding the current light rail slow zone situation. CEO and GM Johnson replied to this letter very graciously on June 21st, providing the light rail speed restrictions webpage. This webpage has provided a higher level of transparency to the general public and answers to some of our questions. We genuinely do appreciate the posting of correspondence such as the PUC 48-hour reports and detailing of scheduling, although we believe some improvements are needed, as well as additional support provided to riders to help navigate the system. We genuinely believe that this is an improvement over previous communications regarding the situation, but that there is still work to be done. We encourage board members, if they have not looked at the questions we have sent in, to take a look and use these questions to inform their understanding of the public's needs regarding the light rail situation. Our understanding is that this letter was distributed to board members on June 20th. We would like to provide some context as to why this letter was sent in. The letter is our attempt at obtaining answers so that the public has the information it needs to successfully understand the conditions that led to the current slow zone situation, what is being done to ameliorate this current situation for riders, and what will be done in the future to ensure full transparency to the public to mitigate situations like this in the future. We believe that these are necessary components to fostering and restoring trust with RTD on behalf of riders as well as the general public. Given the current political headwinds, including debrucing measures and the potential RTD reform, we believe that RTD fostering public trust is a necessity to ensure the best possible outcomes for riders. As of writing this comment earlier today, around noon, there are still some questions that have remained unanswered regarding our correspondence. We have passed along our clarification requests regarding those things. Our initial letter indicated that we would like to receive responses by July 3rd, and we will continue our correspondence to ensure that the public receives transparency regarding this project. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is James Flatham.
Good evening, Chair Davidson, RTD Board, staff. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is James Flatham. I am with Greater Denver Transit. While there has been extensive conversation online that has raised the responsibility for the avalanche of trip-breaking delays on RTD's light rail system, the responsibility for these delays was almost completely absent from the discussion at last night's board meeting. One thing that is painfully clear to the public, but does not appear to be clear to everyone in this room, is the simple fact that RTD is failing on its responsibilities to provide workable service to riders on the light rail system. RTD has not been proactive in the execution of its State of Good Repair program to inform the public and minimize impacts to riders. While the new APTA standard may be considered proactive, RTD's execution was absolutely the opposite of proactive. We know this because proactive execution activities impact riders very differently than reactive activities. Proactive maintenance implementation can be layered incrementally, gradually, and for limited periods of time over normal system operations. This causes minimal and otherwise short periods of inconvenience to riders. This is not what RTD did. Reactive maintenance action is required when problems don't get addressed individually as issues arise, but are allowed to build up and snowball out of control, not in just one or two spots on the network, but across many different parts of the network. This necessitates bitter medicine that is most disruptive to riders, and similar to last summer on the Southeast, the utility of transit to riders gets wiped out. The failure does not stem from any one person at RTD, but rather a culture of complacency and reactive management. What we see is a failed culture in the organization that was unable to address deficiencies before they turned into a crisis, then a failure to take responsibility for those crises publicly, even when the regulator came knocking. While no one person at RTD makes the culture, like any other enterprise, management sets a tone. At RTD, management manages at the direction of the board of directors. My question for management and the board of directors tonight is, what are you doing to change the culture at RTD? How are you going to break down the silos between departments that resulted in a train schedule that failed to contemplate the fixes needed to apply the new APTA standard? How will you foster proactive operations culture that is focused on the rider experience, second only to safety? When I was a kid, RTD was the country's #1 transit agency. RTD used to do this and must again. You must not fail. We can already see outside forces mustering. It began with riders, it expanded to include the state legislature, and now the regulators are coming. If you do not change the culture, then they will come in and change it for you. This cannot wait. This will not go away. This is a crisis that must be addressed decisively. Thank you. That concludes my remarks.
Thank you for your comments. I'll also note for the sake of the record that Director Arusha has joined us in person and was online in transit here. Our next speaker present is Natalie Menton.
Good evening. I'll back off on that. Good evening, RTD Board of Directors. How nice to be back in the room. I am here to speak tonight regarding the TABOR ballot issue, which is a tax increase. And I did try to speak during the committee meeting, but unfortunately due to some issues on my end, I was unable to do that. So I hope you got my written communication regarding the matter. This ballot issue is a tax increase, okay? If you want to say that, cry, we need to de-tabor so we are not affected by the revenue impact, then it must mean there's some dollars associated with it, right? Well, those dollars associated with it, the ones, the TABOR refunds that the Regional Transportation District would be keeping from taxpayers, that's their refund, rebate that the district will be keeping. And it means at the end of the year, the net rate somebody paid to the Regional Transportation District is higher than it would be if this measure was not passed. That is a tax increase. The language does not comply with that. No, instead, RTD used taxpayer money to pay a consultant to craft language and to manipulate it and massage it so that it will fly by voters and try to say it's not a tax increase, but it is a tax increase. And so far for the chart that's not, I don't think it's included in this packet, but was in earlier ones, RTD has kept 650, 675 million maybe from taxpayers over the last, since 2007 through 2019. What is that number now? So it is a tax increase. Why doesn't the language read it? It's because, go back to the minutes where consultant Lori Weigel was consulting the board on what the polling results showed. What is the best language to lay out to the voters to schmooze them and smooth it past? It's a tax increase. And what's very concerning is not only are we talking about sales tax really, but as following the board of directors, the transportation bills that have gone through, and the fact that right now on property tax bill, there is already a line item for Regional Transportation District, I have great fears that RTD will go forward with a property tax issue in the future, but we will have given up all TABOR rights to it here in this election in 2024, and the voters won't even know what they gave up. There's no sunset in this measure. TABOR actually does say it's a 4-year limit, so the public gets to review it, but RTD doesn't want to include that. Here's what I really feel will be the end of this story. Polis will come back, and he is going to make this an appointed board. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. At this time, there's no further individuals that are signed up on the public comment sign-up sheet, but before moving to online, I'll call and see if there are any speakers present who had desired to speak but did not sign up. Okay, seeing none, we will move to our virtual attendees. I'll ask Mr. Jack Kroll, our Executive Manager of the Board Office, are there any hands raised online?
Yes, Chair Davidson. At this time, we have several. The first of which is Sherry Tuffield.
Wonderful. Sherry, you are now recognized for 3 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, hi. My name is Sherry Tuffield, and my comments are in reference also to the discussion that you're going to have later tonight about your ballot initiative for the fall election. I live in RTD District G in unincorporated Arapahoe County. I knocked on a lot of doors during the recent Proposition HH campaign, and you should be aware that the electorate in Colorado is pretty informed, in particular about TABOR and how it has helped safeguard their pocketbooks against government overreach into their pocketbooks. They were in particular not very happy with how the government was less than honest with them when it came to how that ballot initiative was worded. They do prefer when the government tells it to them straight and then makes its case. So my advice would be to let voters know why you want to not begin returning their TABOR money to them as you initially promised, and tell them why, instead of deceptively finding other ways to word your ballot initiative. I think your chances would be better, both in the short term and for RTD's long-term credibility. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Kroll, can you please call on our next remote speaker?
Yes, Chair Davidson. Next, we have Paolo Solorzano.
Thank you. Paolo, you are now recognized for 3 minutes.
Hi, this is Paulo Solorzano with the RTD Riders Alliance. Thanks. Yeah, it has been a very yeah, it's been very difficult last couple of weeks, but today I just want to make sure, on behalf of the RTD Riders Alliance, that yeah, we make sure that with the ongoing cancellations and delays, and into the ongoing future, especially at the level that they are right now, that we make sure that people are not being cited or ticketed, especially people who happen to purchase a 3-hour pass, not a full day pass or something like that. I'm especially thinking about people who are essential workers and the unhoused people who are unhoused and struggling to make appointments and to the resources. So hopefully RTD, police, security, and I guess maybe even if it's possible, bus operators make sure that they have the ability to check in and confirm a cancellation or possible multiple consecutive cancellations or no-shows. I mean, it could really result in altercation that should never have happened. And perhaps if RTD is able to confirm that sort of stuff, which would be, be a first step, but like perhaps offering a free day pass to people who are experiencing homelessness, RTD is at the center of all this still. We can't forget just how much this is affecting people that are exiting the criminal justice system, those on probation, parole, those looking to access mental health or substance abuse resources, and those that are themselves trying to rebuild after a rough stretch of time. Hopefully RTD can be really apathetic to that and put in the work and start talking to people like that are the silent sufferers. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Mr. Kroll, could you please recognize the next remote speaker?
Yes, Chair Davidson. Next, we have Corey Gaines, who is dialing in from the phone number 303-217-6782.
Great. Corey, you are now recognized for 3 minutes.
Hello. Excuse me. Hello. Thank you. My name is Corey Gaines. I'm calling in about your debrucing, detaboring measure. I want to echo the comments that others have made before me because mine will be substantively the same. My wallet doesn't care what words you put to things. My wallet notices that I have less money in it now as compared to before. And I won't repeat everything everyone else has said. I would echo what they say about the wording of your ballot measure. And I just would like to leave you with one last thing as a reminder. Remember that every dollar you have, because we all know that RTD cannot sustain itself with revenues from riders. Almost every dollar you have is a dollar that has come from someone else. It's a dollar that you've taken away from a family, and it's a dollar that they could have put towards something else. If you take our money, we don't really have much of a choice in that. The least you could do is be honest in what you're intending to do. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Kroll, can you please call on our next remote speaker?
Yes, next we have Nate Trella.
Nate, you are now recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you. This is Nate Trella in Englewood. I am a board member of the Blind Parents Division of the National Federation of Blind of Colorado. And once again, wanted to touch on the Access on Demand program and the importance of providing the capability to make multiple stop trips in the program. As our organization has said before, we have a policy to oppose anything that is a reduction in service. And regardless of whether it was provided intentionally, the capability to make multiple stop trips was there in Access on Demand when the program started. And people made decisions about where to live, where to work, around the capability. And from the anecdotes we've looked at, it doesn't appear that the program financially has done anything but increase costs for RTD and for the consumers using the program. I know questions of equity around providing the capability had been raised, and it's hard to see how it's anything but a matter of equity to support the idea of giving people the capability to make seamless trips to run simple errands like picking up groceries at the store that are ready to go, or drop a kid at school on the way to work. I think a better transparency is going to be important as we move forward on addressing this. My understanding from looking at the board packets is that the peer review of the paratransit services has been completed. I'm hoping there will be some kind of public availability of that report soon, or some kind of public presentation or discussion of it. When we began raising the issue about the prohibition on multiple stop trips a few months ago, RTD quickly responded by setting up a website where there would be information posted about the peer review, about potential changes to access on demand or any paratransit services. But beyond that initial post saying that, nothing has been posted to the site. I do also believe the only dedicated board item discussion part of this meeting that I am aware of, unless I missed it, was a discussion about the average fare for these multiple stop trips versus single stop trips, and that data paints an incomplete picture of what the total cost has been to users. So I am still looking forward to the board hopefully receiving information from the staff about the real cost of, or the changes in cost, since the program has explicitly banned the multiple stop trips. I also would think the board needs to address a matter I raised at the last meeting about staff referring service dog users to telling them they should be taking Uber Pet instead of UberX, which essentially is a guide dog tax, an increased cost for that in turn it accommodates really people violating federal law and violating their contracts with the rideshare programs by denying service to service dog users.
Nate, I apologize for the interruption. That is 3 minutes. If you could briefly wrap up, please.
Sure. Just want to say that I do appreciate that the board is looking at allocating more funds today. Hopefully that will advance. And I do believe that the TABOR ballot language that is coming up is actually crucial to maintaining the level of service throughout RTD's offerings, including making it possible to provide more than a skeleton level of paratransit service. So I do appreciate that RTD is taking those steps.
Thank you very much for your comments. Mr. Kroll, if you could please call on our next remote attendee, please.
Yes, Adam Estroff.
Adam, you are now recognized for 3 minutes.
Hello, RTD board. Thank you so much for having me. I wanted to talk about the experience on the E-line. I'm a lifelong transit rider. My favorite personal fact is I've ridden when it was the B line and the FF1 enough miles to circumnavigate the world at least once. Having RTD has enabled me to and my family to have one car instead of two, which saves us a lot of money. And, access to the E-line was really important to me. It was a way I got to work. I was okay when the coping panels needed to be redone. I was able to get a co-working space. But now as the delays have, continued to drag on into multiple years, they're combined with the slow zones, they're combined with trains not necessarily reliably showing up due to operator shortages. The line has become unusable. Employees at my office, they've stopped taking the EcoPass because you can't get to work with it anymore. And I'm worried that my company's going to cut the benefit. So I would just really, again, ask you to come up with an alternative so that that corridor is usable for transit while these repairs are going on. I know it should be fixed by September, but I'm not really very confident with that. So I just wanted to express my frustration, but thank you so much for all of your work.
Thank you very much for your comments. Mr. Kroll, our next speaker, please.
Chair Davidson, there are currently no further speakers in the queue.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kroll. And thank you to everybody for sharing your comments with us this evening, as always. And for the sake of the record, I'd like to now ask Mr. Jack Kroll, Executive Manager of the Board Office, to read in any of the emailed comments that were received for today's meeting.
Thank you, Chair Davidson. You all received 5 email comments. 3 of those comments from Joe Meyer, Adam Estroff, and GDT related to the Southeast Light Rail Corridor maintenance issues. And then GDT also wrote in addition to Cynthia Hutchinson and Diane Perro regarding the TABOR issue. GDT in support and the previous two individuals opposed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kroll, for reading those into the record. With no other participants in the queue at this time, we will close the public participation period. There are no external entities reports this evening, so we will move next to our committee reports. Committee Chair Tisdale is excused for the evening, when therefore will not be providing the audit committee report. I'm sorry. Deschelle. Thank you. My apologies, Director Tisdale. Director Deschelle is excused for the evening. The audit committee has not met since our last board meeting. The next audit committee is scheduled for 10 a.m. on Thursday, July 11th, 2024. Again, apologies. Chair Tisdale of the Finance and Planning Committee. I was jumping a little bit ahead in my mind, going past audit committee. The Finance and Planning Committee report. Chair Tisdale, do you have anything you would like to report?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. The minutes of the June 11th meeting of the Finance and Planning Committee are found at pages 17 through 19 of the packet. The highlight of that meeting was the Tabor and Central Park discussion and the recommended actions, which will be before us tonight. There was also a discussion of items as reflected in our committee work plan, and we appreciate the opportunity to follow up on all of those. And I'm also pleased to say that our General Manager CEO has undertaken to be a participant in our planning meetings for our Finance and Planning Committee meetings going forward to ensure that she's always engaged with us on what we're presenting to the committee. That's all that I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Committee Chair Tisdale. Much appreciated. Next is our Operations, Safety, and Security Committee report. Committee Chair Whitmore, do you have anything you would like to report this evening?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The committee met on June 12th. The minutes are on packet pages 19 through 22. We had unanimous consent result and 2 items on tonight's agenda, including the Group 33 fixed route service contract and the access on demand matter. We also had a comprehensive report from Chief Fitzgerald with our police department on an update on the fine things that department is doing and the added duties of many new officers added to our ranks. And we had a good exchange of ideas and information during that presentation. And then we wrapped up with a very comprehensive presentation proposal of Vision Zero program presented eloquently by Directors Ruscia and Harwick, and appreciated their time and effort in that, certainly for the board's and staff's future consideration, which we will be tackling in the next couple of months. And that's all that I have for tonight's recap.
Thank you very much, Committee Chair Whitmore. Next is our Performance Committee report. Committee Chair Catlin, is there anything you would like to share and report this evening?
Sure, and forgive the backdrop here. The Performance Committee met on June 10th and recommended for the full board's consideration the updated agency performance scorecard, which you'll see tonight. It was unanimously approved to be forwarded, but it was suggested in the executive committee that it be pulled from the consent agenda and considered and to be considered by the full board. The committee remains focused on establishing clear and measurable goals and KPIs for the agency. Our next committee meeting will be next Monday, July 1st at 8:30 a.m., where staff will present the key takeaways from this year's employee survey, and I'm really looking forward to that. And that's kind of our first effort into a deep dive. There will be a second performance committee meeting scheduled in July, at which the committee will commence its work with an outside firm to develop a 360 assessment tool for the GM CEO position. By early July, the board office anticipates firms to be selected to both assist the board in developing the assessment tool as well as to conduct a total compensation analysis for the GM CEO position. Please let me know or Vice Chair Geisinger know if you have any questions or concerns and if you need anything else. And with that, Mr. Chair, I am afraid I'm going to have to put myself on mute and may not be able to participate in some of the actions as I have some medical teams outside my office waiting to get in. So I apologize. I will listen, but may not be able to participate. Thank you.
First Vice Chair Catlin, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for your dedication to the agency, for joining us this evening, and for providing the committee report. At this time, we will move to the approval of our board meeting minutes and committee reports. The board and committee minutes were included in the board packet. Are there any corrections from directors for the minutes to be approved this evening?
Thank you.
Director Harwick.
Just for OS squared, I wanted to see if we could add in our Vision Zero presentation into it.
That was done in other matters. Is that correct and not noted in the, can you clarify a little bit further?
So I would say that it's in the minutes. Are you specifically asking for something other than
The presentation.
The presentation? I mean, to be fair, we have not typically included materials like that in the minutes, but if it's amenable to the board, we would be happy to include it.
I'm not opposed. Any opposed to including the presentation?
No.
General
Okay.
Counsel? Director Rusha?
Thank you, sir. I think in the past, sometimes we have included additional memos that folks had in front of them when making decisions. So I appreciate my colleagues for allowing us to include that presentation for the packet. To that end, we also did have a memo regarding the Group 33 contract. And I believe I mentioned this during the meeting, but I was wondering if that is not in the transcript, could we include that in the transcript? But moving forward, when we do get memos on pending board actions, if we could include them in the minutes as well, because that would be part of a board report, just for transparency to the public, so they understand what we saw.
Thank you, Director Rusha. I see, Mr. Kroll, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I just want to draw some clarification and distinction here. We do produce 2 items related to every board meeting and committee meeting. We produce the minutes and we produce the transcript. The transcript is traditionally the place where we append certain presentations and memos that are provided to the board or public comments such as what you all received earlier. It is substantively different to include those presentations in the minutes. Again, it can be done, but I want to make sure that there's distinction and awareness around where we're placing these items. So I believe Director Harwick and Director Rusha are asking these to be included in the minutes, which is totally fine, but I just want to make sure that you all are aware that we do include these items in the transcript as well.
So to make sure I understand, Director Harwick, your request is to include the presentation in the minutes. Director Rusha, you're referring to the transcript or the minutes?
The minutes, Mr. Chair. And
Are there any opposed to including them? I'm not. Mr. Kroll, I'll work with you after the fact. With those adjustments being made, unless there is objection to considering the adjusted minutes all at the same time, may I please have a motion to approve the minutes for the following meetings: May 29th, 2024 special board meeting, May 29th, 2024 board meeting, June 4th, 2024 study session, June 10th, 2024 Performance Committee, June 11th, 2024 Finance and Planning Committee, June 12th, 2024 Operations and Safety and Security Committee, June 20th, 2024 Executive Committee.
Tisdale, so moved.
I heard Tisdale is the movement and Rusha is the second. Is there any further discussion on the matter? Are there any no votes? Seeing none, we have 14 yes and 1 absent. So I will call on Second Vice Chair Geisinger. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry to do this a little bit late, and I can do it later if that's better, but it looks like maybe a letter that came to the board did not go to the board office. Was that from Danny Katz? Have you seen that? Yeah, it's signed by 18 organizations. The title is "Please Vote Yes to Refer a Measure to Exempt RTD from Any Future TABOR Cap." I may discuss it more during the TABOR cap, but this certainly needs to go into the record, and I'll be sure and get it to you.
Thank you, Second Vice Chair Geisinger. We'll make sure that that makes it into the record, and thank you for noting that for the sake of the record. At this time, with the minutes approved, we will now move on to the chair's report, followed by the general manager's report. I'd like to use my time this evening, not so much to report on the activities of the chair this past month, but to directly address the Southeast Light Rail corridor speed restrictions. I have had the opportunity to engage directly with our general manager and CEO, Johnson, throughout the past 2 weeks as this has been going on, and I thank her for her continual engagement at all hours and times as we work through the process. I'd like to thank our staff, supported by our general manager and CEO, for working to pull together the special board meeting that we had yesterday on this matter. And I encourage all members of the public who are interested to please do review that meeting and the contents of the presentation and meeting that occurred yesterday regarding the situation. But most importantly, I do want to address the community, our customers, the riders of RTD. I, as chair of the RTD board, am sorry for the delays and disruptions that we are all experiencing across the system. Most importantly, I thank you all for sticking with us, for your resilience, and for riding your transit system, RTD, throughout this process. I'd like to note a couple of things that we discussed yesterday. RTD has adopted higher standards for preventative maintenance. Safety is absolutely paramount to this agency, to this board, to this leadership team, and across all of our team at RTD. The results are growing pains. As we increase our standards for preventative maintenance, we are getting more proactive and less reactive. The result is that we do find things, and that those problems come to light earlier. And now that we have increased standards, we of course are seeing more things. RTD is committed to continually prioritizing the safety of all of our lines. I want to be very clear that as per our presentation yesterday, and as has been communicated numerous times, the lines are safe to operate. However, we want to ensure that they remain safe, and we want to be very proactive about that. We could have aligned our communication and our approach to this in a more proactive and less reactive manner as well. That is something that we acknowledge. And what I'd like to state is that RTD is going through a period where our system is starting to age. We are starting to see what happens after a system gets to this point. It is incumbent upon us at RTD to not just do good, but to be great. And part of being great is not just to address the problems, but to learn from those problems, to create new standards of new standard operating procedures that we can follow. That includes not just our maintenance schedules, but that also includes our communication as well. I'd like to thank our team on the communication side of the agency for rapidly moving to deliver high levels of transparency in terms of not only what we are doing and what our schedules are and when speed restrictions are being released, but also including communications that are going between the agency and its regulatory bodies, as well as things that we are receiving as the board, making public for those that ride RTD. So with that being said, again, I'd most of all like to thank everybody for their patience. I think that RTD staff is showing tremendous resilience and patience throughout this process. I recognize that everybody, including those who are working on the lines every evening, are having to go the extra mile and do a lot of extra work that hadn't been anticipated. I also recognize that we've asked for increased communications and increased meetings for those that report directly into this board, and again, thank them for the patience and the execution of what I believe was a successful and helpful meeting yesterday. But again, Most of all, I would like to thank the customers of RTD for being resilient, for using your voice, and again, most of all, for using your transit system, RTD. So that being said, I thank you all very much for allowing me to share those sentiments with you. At this time, I will now hand the floor over to our General Manager and CEO for her monthly report. General Manager, CEO Johnson, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Good evening to all. And I appreciate the acknowledgement and what you just stated, recognizing that this has been a time unlike any other at RTD, recognizing the age of the system. So thank you for the support of staff, and thank you for acknowledging the difficulties in which our customers have endured. As I generally do, I am going to share a few highlights and activities and strategic endeavors which I have engaged in since this body last convened at its regularly scheduled meeting on March 29th. I will also be presenting an update on activities related to Phase 1 of the near-term downtown rail reconstruction project. The report and activities I will be talking about are all centered around our strategic priorities, as well as the 2023-2024 strategic initiatives of Back to Basics, People Power, and Welcoming Transit Environment. Related to community value, from Friday, May 31st through Monday, June 3rd, I traveled to Cleveland, Ohio to participate in activities related to the American Public Transportation Association. This was done in conjunction with the annual rail conference. The rail conference is intended for individuals from all rail modes, urban, commuter rail, high speed, as well as intercity. And it's a technical conference. It's featured sessions on technology, operations and maintenance, and safety, security, and more. Over the conference weekend, I attended the APTA board meeting and committee meetings of which I am a member, such as the Legislative Steering Committee and the Commuter Rail CEO Committee, of which I serve as the vice chair. On Thursday, June 6th, I, along with Director Tisdale and Chief Communications and Engagements Officer Stuart Summers, attended Denver South bi-monthly partnership meeting. These bi-monthly meetings bring together anywhere from 75 to 150 stakeholders from throughout the South I-25 Southeast rail line corridor, including local elected officials and business leaders and key jurisdictional and organizational staff members to seek networking opportunities as well as information. I was one of 2 featured speakers and had the opportunity to share information regarding RTD's transit network with a focus on the Southeast corridor. Most recently, from June 12th through June 20th, I, along with numerous transit agency CEOs nationwide, federal officials, including the acting administrator, Veronica Vanterpool, as well as our regional administrator from District 8, or Region 8, I should say, and representatives from the American Public Transportation Association participated in an executive study mission hosted by APTA and the Federal Transit Administration. We were able to travel to Paris and London to engage with leaders from RATP, the transportation operator for Paris and the surrounding region, as well as Transport for London, the local government body responsible for most of the transport network in London. Both entities are considered some of the world's best public transportation agencies. They provide complex and well-integrated public transportation networks with a high standard of service delivery. Participants gain insights into the capital planning and operations of the urban and regional rail and bus networks, as well as traveling the high-speed rail network that connects the 2 cities. A mix of strategic and operational topics were discussed of relevance to North America, considering the impacts that we have here relative to service delivery, adapting to new mobility trends post-pandemic. It's important to note that Transport for London, which is regarded as the largest transit operator within the country, basically has seen the same thing that we have seen, whereby individuals aren't utilizing the system due to hybrid work, and more specifically see increased ridership on Saturdays, but the high peak days tend to be like Wednesdays and Thursdays, with some elements of Tuesday as well. And the same thing was noted in Paris. And so I share that because I think it's critically important, as we often look through a siloed glass, thinking that we're the only ones. But as we all know, the pandemic was global, and recognizing as we talk about resurgence of ridership and things of the like, we know that at least 15% of ridership of what we once knew about 4 years ago probably will not return, just because we have adapted to a new way of doing business, i.e. with the virtual participants we have here this evening. But more specifically as well, we talked about safety and security and climate resilience improvements, recognizing that Transport for London has been victim of terrorist attacks dating back to the 1800s. And those elements are critically important and have the opportunity to bring forward specific questions that are reflective of our system here. Also talking about transitioning to zero emissions, having some of the same issues that we see in America, but on a smaller scale, recognizing the difference in governance structures and how business is done. Land use, transit, and housing was critically important in leveraging technological innovations and enhancing the customer experience. And then it was mentioned tonight in public comment, organizational culture. It's something the transit agencies are enduring everywhere. And so I just wanted to give those highlights because I think it's very germane to what we're doing. And then on Friday, June 21st, I met with the deputy mayor of the city of Khmelnytsky, which is in western Ukraine. He reached out and was able to make that connection and spent some time with him on Friday morning as they are interested in garnering an understanding of RTD's transit service delivery. And it was quite important as we've been going through what we would qualify a difficult time here when you're talking about buses being left on the side of the road because they don't have electricity, because they're in the midst of a war. It puts things in perspective and what really matters. And I think that we've done a yeoman's job in making lives better through connections when we can step back and look at the adverse impacts on different parts of the globe. So as it relates to community value and customer excellence and employee ownership, on a lighter note, as we talk about getting back to basics, just recently we had an exit conference with the Federal Transit Administration, and I'll give some context to that. FTA utilizes training reviews as a management tool for examining recipient performance and adherence to current FTA requirements and policies. RTD's most recent triennial review prior to this year was completed in 2021. It was delayed due to the pandemic, and it was in the early days of my tenure with the agency. Triennial reviews were mandated by Congress in 1982, and the whole purpose of the review is to assess how recipients of urbanized area formula program funds meet statutory and administrative requirements. The review currently examines up to 23 separate operational areas. In addition to helping evaluate recipients, the review gives FTA an opportunity to provide technical assistance on FTA requirements and aids FTA in reporting to the Transportation Secretary, Congress, and other oversight agencies, and the transit community as it relates to the urbanized area formula program. So to reiterate what I had noted last night during RTD's special board meeting, I am pleased to report that in an exit conference held yesterday, Monday, June 24th, FTA officials, RTD staff, and members of the third-party consultancy selected by FTA to lead the effort to review RTD met to discuss the agency's stellar results from this year's appraisal. I will provide more information, but it's quite notable as I engage in a myriad of different arenas at a national level. One thing we do know for certain, oftentimes with recipients, one of the most highly reviewed areas is contract and procurement. This agency did not have one deficiency as related to our procurement practices. We did not have one deficiency as related to our transit asset management plan, nor did we have any deficiency as it relates to our public transportation agency safety plan. I felt compelled to say that as it relates to information that's been circulating relative to what it is and what this agency is not doing. And I take great pride in leading this organization because I know the individuals that comprise this work very hard. And recognizing your opening comments as it relates to you forfeiting the opportunity to report out and acknowledging what we are up against, it's critically important to say that this is where we are and we have to lean in together and support one another as we look to maintain and sustain this transit network for years to come. So more information once we get the final report, which is generally sent to the board chair. So I just wanted to take the opportunity, since that was top of mind, to share. Related to employee ownership, over the past 2 weekends, RTD has been a participant in 2 large-scale parades, including both the Juneteenth parade in the historic Five Points neighborhood on Saturday, June 15th, and then just this weekend, the Pride Parade held along Colfax Avenue on Sunday, June 23rd. I extend my thanks and appreciation to all those employees who volunteered their personal time, to board members who are out there. I saw some people out there dancing. I'll keep their names quiet, but had a good time. And it was a good time by all, and that just shows how critical we are to the community and how we are interwoven. And so now I will share a brief presentation as relates to the near-term rail reconstruction project. And so just really quickly, I'll talk about outreach and engagement and project status. And so commending our communications team, staff has continued to visit businesses and residences near the impacted intersections. What's so great about this is leveraging the relationships we do have with the Downtown Denver Partnership, as well as with Denver's Department of Transportation and Infrastructure. As we all know, the 16th Street Mall has been under construction, and so what we've done is partner with this association and this city department to leverage contact lists and things of the like and approach it from a partnership vantage point. We're able to get specific information about the businesses, contacts in particular, and then able to engage with the appropriate business leaders, say it's at a hotel or a restaurant, so we know who the contact is and they can in turn disseminate information to minimize the impacts for individuals that are patronizing their businesses or their establishment. And project team members have been sending regular emails to downtown businesses, and as I iterated, this is all tied into leveraging the partnerships in reference to local governmental entities and associations. Next up, as we talk about our own earned and paid media, our website has regularly been updated as it relates to detour maps. We have made great progress as we go forward, and it's imperative that there is a portal whereby people can seek out information. I'm not going to read everything on the slide in the interest of moving forward, but news releases and, we have a paid media campaign, which is critically important as the work progresses, so people have an understanding, especially as we talk about the other elements as it relates to our overall service delivery and what we're faced with now. We want to ensure that we're keeping all interested stakeholders up to speed on what's happening. So really quickly with the project status as an update as of today, I think this may have been lost on some people because there's been a laser-like focus on our preventative maintenance and mitigation efforts, but work on the Broadway-Welton 19th Street intersection was completed on Monday, June 17th. I'd like to commend our capital program staff as well as our consultants and our partners at the City and County of Denver. We had factored in, 20 days into the schedule. We were able to complete that 6 days ahead of schedule. Broadway reopened on Tuesday, June 18th. Remaining work at the intersection is anticipated to be completed on Sunday, June 30th, and I emphasize it's anticipated because we never know what could happen. A thunderstorm could happen and lightning could strike. However, we are making great progress, and then crews will move forward to 15th in California and then to 15th in California and Stout in July. Moving forward, here's a quick little timeline of where we are. We commenced Broadway and Welton. We completed closure of the intersection in 14 days. As I just stated, June 18th, we basically opened up that intersection to the public. We anticipate Broadway and Welton to be completed. And then as we move forward, one thing that's critically important is we made a commitment as we work with the City and County of Denver is that we will not be impacting any of the intersections, especially along Broadway during the course of the Independence Day holiday and celebrations that are happening. And so I will continue to provide updates as I made that commitment, and just want to stress that the dates are subject to change. One thing's for certain as we go forward, we are working with the city and county as we have final plans. There's no date specific to July through September because our construction plans are with the city and county, and we are awaiting the final sign off as it relates to the permitting. So with that, that completes my report, and thank you for your attention and the opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much, General Manager and CEO Johnson, for your report and also for the update on the Downtown Light Rail Reconstruction Project. Appreciate the continued commitment to not only the efforts there and completing that, but the updates to the board. Thank you. I'll take any brief questions for the General Manager and CEO at this time. I see Director Rusha has her hand raised.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your presentation and also having a PowerPoint to guide us along for a lot of complex stuff going on. So we've talked about the Welton blankout signs, and I know that that's not Welton and Broadway, but I was wondering if you don't mind if you have any updates on when those will be installed. And I think that's a 10-block stretch between maybe 20th and 30th. And that project has been delayed for a while. And so if that is a project that we are going to incorporate into the next phase, into the Welton corridor phase, if that's something that if you could just share with us, or if that will be done separately as we had originally intended a couple of years ago. And I apologize if that was out of left field. If we can follow up, that's okay, but it's something that I know you and I have talked about, and I was wondering if you could give us an update.
General Manager?
Mr. Chair, if I may, yes, thank you very much, Director Rusha. We have talked about that, and I know that's in progress. I would like to double back because I don't want to put forward information without confirming with staff where we are in the process. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Not seeing further hands raised. Again, thank you, General Manager and CEO, for the report. We'll move on to the unanimous consent portion of our agenda. There are 3 items on the unanimous consent agenda. Those are the Central Park Station Development Negotiation, the Group 32 Fixed Route Service Contract, and the Access on Demand additional funding. If anyone has a change to, discussion on, or questions about these items, please feel free to advise the chair at this time, and I would of course be happy to pull it from the unanimous consent agenda for consideration under recommended action. Director Rusha.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to request that we pull items A and B off of unanimous consent.
And that is the Central Park Station Development Renegotiation and the Group 33 Fixed Route Service Contract.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll pull those off. Seeing no further hands raised, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda, which currently includes the item C, the Access on Demand additional funding?
So moved. Tisdale, so moved.
I heard Rosenthal as the movement, Tisdale as the second. Are there any no votes? Seeing none, we will have 14 yes votes with 1 absent. This time, we will now move on to our recommended action portion of the agenda. We'll go ahead and take these in order of those that we just pulled off. So we will start with item A. This is the Central Park Station Development Negotiation. This is for the Board of Directors to authorize the General Manager and CEO or her designee to negotiate and execute an exclusive negotiation agreement, or ENA, with Ulysses Development Group for the future lease and development of the real property located at 3801 North Ulster Street, Denver, Colorado.
Tisdale, so moved.
Busick, second.
I have Tisdale and Busick. All right, questions on the matter? Director Rusha.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll be brief here. So this has come up in previous meetings, and when I reviewed the transcript, I wasn't entirely clear if we will be using our authority under new statute to potentially negotiate the lease price below market value. I'm not saying we're locked into that, but I think the first time we talked about this as a discussion item in OSS, it was kind of implied that we couldn't do that midstream. And then in our last meeting, it was suggested that was a possibility. So just wanted to get clarification before we move forward.
General Manager.
Thank you very kindly. When this issue came up, Director Rusha, previously, Chessie Brady, our manager, as it relates to TOD, stated that basically what we're going to do is assess what is most practical and then apprise the board going forward, recognizing when we embarked on this, that legislation had not been effectuated. And so recognizing that we need to do our due diligence, we will in turn come back to the board and apprise you all accordingly as it relates to what the path forward will be.
Director Rusha.
Thank you, sir. If I may just quickly. Thank you so much, GM CEO Johnson. I have stated before on the record, and I just wanted to say it again, how important it is for us to ensure that public property is for the public good, and I'm really excited about the potential of this project. And it kind of leads me to my second question, which we've discussed before, but not in depth. Our current TOD policy encourages up to 35% or 35% of our units or partner units to be affordable. And it sounds like this project is going to go way beyond, possibly even 100% affordable. So I think I think it's commendable for everyone working on this and for the agency to be taking this on, and I'm really excited. And that's also, for those of you who don't know, that's my district. What I would like to do and just state on the record again, because it would not be appropriate to try to change our TOD policy on the fly, or even as this was moving through, how important it is that those units are truly affordable. And often, and I think in the past here, but often when we say affordable, we will say 80% AMI, 60% AMI, and that is not affordable. And so I just, again, it's not prescriptive. I'm not offering any amendment. I think some of my colleagues would fall out of their chairs if I tried, but I just want to say, like, on the record, and I trust you, Ms. Johnson, that we do everything we can to ensure that these units truly are affordable, and that, to me, and I think to many policymakers who work in this space, means, anywhere from 30% AMI to 80% AMI. So where we can be a partner, I think that is a net benefit for everybody, including my community. So I just wanted to say that on the record. In addition to affordable, accessible. So if HUD dollars are involved, there's a minimum percentage of units that have to be accessible. That minimum percentage nowhere meets the need for affordable or accessible housing for people with disabilities. And so that would be another area where I would just encourage the agency to do everything we can with the tools that we have to go above and beyond for this community benefit. I'm a yes today. I just want to make sure I had some clarification where we were on potential negotiations. And I also trust the agency will kind of apprise us of major updates when they come. I probably won't, many of us might not be here when this comes for a final vote. We're looking at 18 months plus. But again, I really appreciate this, and I appreciate your work and your leadership. Thank you.
Thank you very much. General Manager, was a comment you want to make?
I appreciate the comments, Director Rusha, but let me be clear. I may be leading the agency, but I would like to acknowledge Chessie Brady's efforts. And so I know she's sitting out in the gallery. So thank you, Ms. Brady.
Thank you very much. Seeing no other hands, I will call for the vote. Are there any no votes? Seeing none, that will pass with 14 yes votes and 1 absent. Next, we have item B, which is the Group 33 Fixed Route Service Contract. This is for the Board of Directors to authorize the General Manager and CEO or her designee to enter into a contract with Transdev Services Incorporated for the provision of fixed route services as described herein. This contract is for 3 years with 2 one-year options for a total of 5 years at a total not to exceed cost of $186,603,968. Additionally, RTD will reimburse the contractor's direct fuel costs in an amount estimated to be $16,101,761 over 5 years. The total 5-year not to exceed cost for services and fuel is $202,705,729. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I had Broom as the movant, and I heard Bouquet as the second. Questions and discussion on the matter? Director Rusha?
Thank you, sir. So first, I do want to thank staff for offering a memo providing additional information to follow-up questions I had on this contract. I cannot recall if that was shared with, board-wide or just independently. But one of the things that I didn't ask clearly for, and I hope we could just quickly address this today, is the service hours. So if we were purchasing something else, I might call it price per unit, but I don't know how else to phrase it here. Perhaps our GMCO or Mr. Worthen can tell me the right phrasing, but what I'm trying to assess here getting more or less the same in terms of service hours.
General
Mr.
Manager.
Chair, I will ask Mr. Worthen, who serves as our AGM of bus operations, to address this inquiry. While I have an understanding, I don't want to misspeak because he's been working on it with his team.
Mr. Worthen, thank you for joining us. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Director Rusha. As I understand the question, you're trying to understand from an hourly rate basis, is this comparable to what we're paying for other contracts? Is that correct?
If I may, Mr. Chair?
Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, and I should have been more clear. Actually, just to, in change from the contract that preceded this is what I'm asking. And I don't know if it is an hourly basis or however we would measure that. And I do apologize for not asking, for not emailing prior to the meeting. It's something I kind of thought of when I was poring over the packet before I walked in.
Okay.
Mr. Worthen?
Thank you. I appreciate the question. Thank you, Chair Davidson. The current contract 5-year cost, the cost per revenue hour is $99.85. The proposed contract year for the first year, the revenue cost is $119.84. I will say that this is very comparable to the existing contracts that we have. Commerce City, the hourly rate is $119.04. And our Denver Group 31, which is in its 4th year, is $112.33. So based upon the prevailing conditions, the contract hourly rates is comparable to our other contracted services.
Thank you, Mr. Worthen. Director Rusha?
Thank you, sir, and thank you, Mr. Worthen. So I will be a yes tonight. I think this might be the first type of contract like this that I'm a yes, and that is in part because we were able to have some dialogue and I was able to get more information that I needed. And I do understand that costs are going to rise over time. That is expected. So in the future, when I inquire, I will just be more specific. Because I was also wondering, what the cost increase is, because while we can see the raw dollar or the dollar amount of the potential contract, we don't necessarily know if the service hours are the same. Does that make sense if we're buying the same amount of service? But that being said, I appreciate the memo and the dialogue during OSS and you addressing this topic tonight. So I'm a yes, and I appreciate it. And if we could just kind of continue that, those kinds of conversations between, before major service delivery contract votes, I personally would appreciate it, but I think it helps all of us. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Rusha. Director Harwick?
This is similar to my question the other day about access on demand. Do we have a point where, if we're paying $120 for a service hour, at what point do we know when it's just more cost effective for us to run the service ourselves?
Thank you for the question, Director Harwick. Every time we do a contract, we do an internal cost estimate for the services. So we will actually look at what it would take for us to operate those services fully burdened, including all the operating and capital costs associated with it. That becomes our baseline for whether or not a contract is viable or not. Those cost estimates change based upon market conditions, CBAs, and things like that. But each time we do a contract award, we do an internal cost estimate itself.
Thank you, Director. Director Harwick?
I'm just curious if at any point we've decided it actually was in our best benefit to bring that service back inside.
Yeah, General Manager CEO Johnson, please.
Thank you very kindly, and I appreciate the question, Director Harwick. I think if anything, we need to take a robust and a holistic look at what it is we're actually seeking to do. In some instances, as we go forward and we're looking at our facility fleet transition plan, recognizing that there's a myriad of different elements that come into play, this is the opportunity in which we have, once we have some baseline data, to discern what the path forward could be. recognizing we don't know those facilities. So I wanted just to put a finer point on that because that came up during the course of the study session. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, General Manager. Director Russo?
Thank you for letting me have another bite at the apple. Don't want to belabor this, but this is also something that came up early this year and last year, and we talked about putting this on our work plan, and I think it dropped off our work plan. So, we don't have to make a date certain right now, but is this something, is this a discussion that we can have kind of as a follow-up to the previous study session, where we can look at this more in depth, and then the board can have a better understanding of everything that we are assessing moving forward, and perhaps at some future date, staff could give us a kind of a report with a breakdown.
Mr. Chair?
General Manager, please go ahead.
So if I'm clear, Director Arusha, you're talking about directly operating services. Am I correct?
Yes, as it relates to rubber tire.
Rubber tire. I would say I'm amenable to doing that as we go forward and we have some understanding of what it is that we're talking about. And that gets back to the response that I just provided to Director Harwick. Right now, we would be having a conversation without any finite information to help guide the discussion because as we stand right now, we don't have the facilities, and this is a process that would take some time. And I would just like to share, as I just talked about, the study mission of which I was a part of, this is something that's happening in Paris right now. When they were looking, I'm sorry, I meant to say London, as they're looking to bring some services internal to the organization. And so it's really an in-depth process as you move forward. So I think we have to be well informed, but yes, that doesn't mean that we can't, but I'm just trying to manage expectations. We can have discussions, and then there's other pieces of that, recognizing we'd have to change state statute and things along those lines. So thank you.
Final.
Thank you, Director Rusha.
Just, yeah.
Further?
Thank you so much for that insight and feedback. Just thinking back to how we present contract requests to the board on service delivery, particularly with like an existing vendor or a contract that is longstanding, and just recognizing that we are in the position we're in now in part because the legislature used to mandate this. I'm
Call for the orders of the day, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Any opposed to calling the orders of the day? Are you calling the question?
No, Mr. Chair, I'm just calling for the orders of the day. The discussion's out of order. We have a recommended action before us, and we're talking about further approaches toward how we might contract in the future. We have a recommended action. Can we vote on that, please?
Director Rusha, can you just briefly wrap up your comments here? The comment I would make is that I think that given that we have the work plans that you alluded to, that this can be a retreat topic to add to a future position to discuss policy position. Do you have any further comments on the recommended action at hand?
Sure. I will just be more direct. Previously, we were given a very comprehensive breakdown of what it would cost to run these services internally versus externally, and I will just be more direct and request that moving forward, we go back to that so we can save time in meetings and I'll have a comprehensive understanding.
Thank you, Director. I will call for the vote on this recommended action. Are there any no votes on item B? Seeing none, that will be 14 yes, 1 absent. We will now move to our next recommended action. This is item D. This is the agency performance scorecard recommended revisions. This is for the board to adopt revisions to the 2021 to 2026 strategic plan agency performance scorecard. Do we have a motion?
Tisdale, so moved.
Second, Bouquet.
Tisdale is the movement, Bouquet is the second. Is there discussion on this? Second Vice Chair Geisinger.
Thank you very much. I will be a yes vote on this, although I am most anxious, as I've expressed in the Performance Committee, to see the KPIs. I think this is helpful information, but it's still softer. And the KPIs, I think, are the data that we need to see. In saying that, I want to say that the performance dashboard has been published. Some people may not know that. And staff and Ms. Johnson have asked for feedback from the board and others to go to the website, check out the performance dashboard, and indicate where areas where they would like different information, what things they like, what things they think could enhance it. I think you can look at other agencies and see other examples of things they do. I believe so I would encourage people to go do it. I haven't had a chance myself. I did start, but I haven't been able to get my feedback back. I believe the KPIs are coming to the Performance Committee in September. I still think that's a critical piece of our way of evaluating the agency, so I look forward to that. Thanks.
Thank you, Second Vice Chair. Any further comments, questions? All right, seeing none, I will call for the vote. Are there any no votes on this action? Director Ruscia? And I'm sorry, I may not have noted. First Vice Chair Catlin, I just was looking at the screen here. Did you have a question or was that a no vote?
No, I raised my hand prior to you saying that. I just wanted to let you know that I have rejoined the meeting since some of the medical stuff is over. So I just wanted to let you know, and I will be a yes vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So again, I'll just check. Are there any no votes? We have Director Ruscia. All right, with Director Ruscia as 1 no, we have 13 yes and 1 absent. The next action item is item E, the Taxpayers Bill of Rights Ballot Initiative, or TABOR. This is for the Board of Directors to adopt the attached resolution series of 2024, submitting a ballot question to the eligible electors of RTD at an election to be held on November 5th, 2024, without imposing any new tax or increasing any tax rate, authorizing RTD to continue to collect, retain, and spend all revenues it receives from whatever sources without regard to the limitations set forth in the Taxpayers Bill of Rights, or TABOR. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Tisdale, so moved.
I heard Geisinger as the movement and Tisdale as the second. Is there discussion or questions on this item? Second Vice Chair Geisinger.
Thank you very much. I mentioned the letter earlier that's entitled, "Please vote yes to refer a measure to exempt RTD from any future TABOR cap." It is sent to us by Danny Katz, the Executive Director of COPERG. It is signed, it is urging the board, we urge you to act now to ensure that RTD retains 100% of the tax revenue collected within the district to avoid disruptions to transit riders and to secure the district's financial sustainability. Reading just a portion of the letter. I'm briefly gonna, because I think it's important how many of these 18 groups: Denver Streets Partnership, COPERG, the Colorado Cross Disability Coalition, Pedestrian Dignity, National Organizations for Youth Safety, the West Corridor Transportation Management Association, Greater Denver Transit, our friends that are here tonight, the Southwest Energy Efficiency Project, Energy Outreach Colorado, the Metro Mayor's Caucus on behalf of 38 Metro Mayor members, the Strong Denver, the AARP Colorado, the Denver Bike Mayor, Denver Bicycle Lobby, and Greater Denver Transit, YIMBY Denver, the Sierra Club, Women from the Mountain, Servicios de la Raza, and Green Latinos have signed that letter urging us to move forward. Just briefly, I know we've discussed this since been here, but TABOR envisions a process that allows the voters to exempt a given government from the TABOR cap. And many governments in Colorado have done it, even though the state has not. Local governments, school boards, others. We will just be following that process that is prescribed in TABOR to ask the voters for their permission. The taxpayers exempted RTD in 1999 from the TABOR cap until certain bonds were repaid, which will happen in November 2024. It is totally appropriate now to ask the voters to reinstate that exemption. We conducted polling in May through Lori Weigel's organization, and 68% of the respondents said that they would support the ballot issue, which is essentially the same language as in our recommended action tonight. So I will be a yes, and I hope everyone else will be as well.
Thank you, Second Vice Chair. And First Vice Chair Catlin, since I missed your hand before, my apologies on that. I see your hand is raised. First Vice Chair Catlin, please go ahead.
Thank you. I'm a little bit torn on this. I am in favor of TABOR for the most part. That being said, I do not believe that this increases the rate at which RTD collects taxes, and that's in part due to the previous exemption in 1999. So the voters will not endure any additional hardship, in my opinion. That being said, the original vote was to exempt RTD from TABOR in order to help pay off the bonds that were issued for the T-Rex project. So I think some of the concerns that I've heard addressed about it be slightly misleading, I take to heart, because now we're really using it not for that specific purpose, but for the general benefit of the agency and trying to keep operations and intact. So I really appreciate that. On the other hand, it's clear that we need the revenue, but my main reason for supporting this, although I'm as I said torn, is that I believe it's up to the vote of the people, and if the vote of the people believe that it's in RTD's best interest to retain these TABOR surpluses, then I am for it, because I do believe that the voters should decide. So thank you very much for stating my piece.
Thank you, First Vice Chair. Treasurer Bouquet.
Sorry, a little distracted. Sorry. So I guess my question would be, so at the end of packet page 80 and the top of packet page 81, the language that we're looking at exactly, is that the language that's going to be proposed to the voters? Ms. Snyder, correct? Okay.
General Counsel.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, perfect. And then basically we're making a vote today to endorse this ballot measure as a board of directors. There wouldn't be any chance that the language would change after said endorsement, correct? Or anyone could take that question.
General
Sorry,
Counsel, you want to clarify?
Oh, thank you. Could you just restate your question? Are you asking if it would change after the board approves it tonight?
Yes.
No, it wouldn't change. There is a provision in the resolution that does say substantially in this format. So I note that Director Geisinger had found a stray comma in that first bullet point on packet page 81. So we'll remove that stray comma, but otherwise it'll be in the same form that you see it here.
Okay, perfect. So when it regards to the bullet point, the first bullet point that's presented, it said providing transfer, excuse me, let me read prior, to originally approved by the voters in 1999, B, continue to permit RTD to retain revenue necessary to provide vital RTD services, including but not limited to providing transportation choices to local residents by maintaining, an emphasis on the word, and growing current levels of bus and rail services. I guess the question would be is if that bullet point is going to be included, the big thing is the idea of growing current levels of bus and rail services. How are we going to be making that commitment to our constituency if this is successful as a ballot measure?
Thank you, Treasurer. I'd like to just call on General Manager and CEO Johnson for any clarification on that. But We are pursuing the result of our most recent comprehensive operational analysis that we had branded the System Optimization Plan, or SOP. We have not reached the levels of service that were in as a part of that comprehensive operational analysis. So I believe the ballot language is currently encompassing the current service levels as well as the trajectory that we are on. General Manager CEO Johnson, is there any clarification you'd want to add further?
Mr. Chair, thank you for the opportunity. I think that is on par with what we were foreseeing, recognizing using a comprehensive operational analysis to guide the service delivery. And so during the course of this time, there could be a subsequent COA as well. But yes, Mr. Chair, you answered the question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Treasurer. Director Busick?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'm in support of this measure as well. I don't agree that it's a tax increase. And some people talked about the language as being deceptive and not knowing where the money is going to go, but I don't know how you can be more clear on how we're going to use the funds if this measure succeeds. So I think the language is very good. I've seen TABOR resolutions in the past that just say, just let us, debruce, with no discussion about what the funds would then be used for. But I think we go out of our way to provide that information. I also want to thank the 18 members who addressed that letter in support. And because they're here, Mr. Bamber, Mr. Flatham, Ms. Welch, Greater Denver Transit, thanks so much. And also, there's more than 18, because as you can see, Heidi Williams, the Executive Director of Metro Mayors, representing 38 Denver Metro Mayors, are in support of this as well. Thanks, that's all I have.
Thank you, Director Busick. Agreed. Nice to have the clarifying language of the intent in here. Director Broom.
Thank you, Chair. I wonder if we could have staff explain what the ratchet effect is and why this cures that.
I'm happy to take an initial stab at that, and then if our Chief Financial Officer, Doug McLeod, would like to fill any gaps, he's more than welcome to. The ratchet effect really has to do, as it's called, especially when facing a downturn. Basically, the TABOR cap is a function of the revenues that were collected in a given year, and then added on top of that, CPIU, or Consumer Price Index for all urbanized areas, basically inflation, and a local growth factor. In this case, in our case, that's set based on the delta of property values, which are properties that are added within the district versus those that are eliminated, most notably, destroyed properties. Essentially, if we are in a year when we're collecting at a lower amount, that therefore lowers the cap because we're starting from that revenue collection point. So once you get a downturn, even if you were to recover extremely fast, if sales and use tax, for example, were to bounce back substantially the following year, so let's say we had a several % dip and then it came right back the year after that, well, our ability to recover, so to speak, does not match the market recovery rate. It is fixed to the revenues we collected in the lowest revenue year. Then you're adding inflation and you're adding that growth factor, which really that growth factor isn't tied to sales and use tax at all, which is 70 to 75% of our revenues on that midterm basis. So it not only results in a refund on a downturn year, but it also results in basically you stay at that refunded level. That's really the ratchet effect. I'm going to ask, before turning back to you, Director Broom, to see any clarifying points, if Chief Financial Officer Doug McLeod, and thank you for joining us, would like to fill in any additional information.
No, thank you, Mr. Chair. You said it better than I could have.
Thank you, Mr. McLeod. Director Broom?
Well, I'm just going to say that that's the reason I'm going to be voting in favor of this, because it's awfully hard to explain to the average person how this works. And so worrying about those early statements on the ballot question pales in comparison to, the ratchet effect could have, because there's a good possibility we may have a major recession in the near future. And if revenues went down 20% and then only recovered 5%, it might take us 5 years to get back to where we were. And the only way you balance the budget then is to cut service. And and people will ask, well, why are you cutting service? You've got the money. No, we have to refund the money. It's just, the whole thing is ridiculous. It needs to be repealed.
Thank you, Director Broom, for the comments. Yes, and thank you for highlighting that. Actually, if you were to run, it's an interesting analysis to do. If you take given years in our past and apply, you say that this year we were not exempt, and this year you kind of change the years at which the exemption would happen, you can actually see that impact quite profoundly, because a year that you may not have refunded, if the year prior you actually do an adjustment and say, well, that would have been a year we were subject to TABOR, it can have an impact then for multiple years afterwards, just as you're characterizing, which really just becomes a risk exposure over time. And the taxpayers are already paying less during that recession. That's why we've collected less. But then we're not recovering at the rate that the taxpaying public is. So thank you for highlighting that. Appreciate it. Mr. McLeod, thank you for joining us. Next hand raised I see is Secretary Guzman.
Thank you. I want to thank Director Geisinger, Vice Chair Geisinger, for bringing that letter up for several reasons. And I think it's important to note we have a lot of people of diversity that are speaking right now. People that rely on the system, people that depend on this system to get to work. The women on the mountain represent the indigenous women. The Green Latinos represent the Latino, Latinx, Chicano, and the indigenous community. And Servicios de la Raza also represents the Latino community, but also work with a very specific group of people in our community to help them reintegrate back into society after drug abuse and addiction, receiving services to help them reintegrate back into work. And so I am listening to my community, and I will be a yes on this when we call the question. But I want to say that out loud, and I want to point that out, because that was a long list of names from different and disparate parts of our community. But we're speaking, and I am speaking on behalf of the people of color as a member of this board, because they have said that. And this is not easy to go to the taxpayers and say, we would like to retain your money to use it for services. But we are Americans, and guess how we pay for public services? By the collection of taxes. Private entities do not pay for this service. And I would rather run the service knowing that our community has our back and are willing to pay for the services to complete and work on and improve our systems. And that's why we have an elected board, because the public pays the taxes to have this service. That's why we all sit in this room. So it would be faulty and negligent of us not to go to the taxpayers and ask them if they are willing to continue paying taxes for this service. Not to parse too many words or get too involved in any kind of comments, I do want to suggest that the reason that this elected board exists is because the state does not pay for this service. And I think that is a really healthy reminder to everybody that we serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary. Director Ruscia.
Thank you, sir. I just have a quick neutral legal question for council, if permissible.
Please go ahead.
So I understand that, so there's a deadline for us to file this, and if you could just briefly explain, does this go before like the title board or another entity to approve the language? Or is it presumed to be legal unless otherwise challenged via petition, and then that would be litigated in court?
General Counsel.
Thank you, Director Ruscia, for the question. No, this will not go to the title board.
Thank you. All right, seeing no further discussion on this, I'd like to thank everybody, in particular, I mentioned this at committee, I believe, but Second Vice Chair Geisinger, thank you for all of your work on this effort, in understanding it and motivating a lot of action that started while you were chair and has continued into this year. So thank you very much for that. Thank you to staff for helping to work to really understand the situation and work through what is a surprisingly complex calculation when it comes to looking at TABOR caps on sales and use tax that are a product of inflation and changes in property value. So thank you to everybody involved for all the research on this and all the thoughtfulness. I'll now go ahead and call for the vote. Are there any no votes on this action? Seeing none, that will pass with 14 yes votes, and we have 1 absent. Thank you very much. I know we're getting to the point where it'll be helpful to have a break, although let me just, I think, push on here. We do have an executive session. Let's just go next to our report of director activities, which will be followed by other matters, and then we will be voting on an executive session. So at this time, are there any directors who would like to report on their activities for this past month? Secretary Guzman, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am 3 sessions through, 6 sessions with the LITLA sessions that I'm working on, Latinos in Transit Leadership Academy. This last month, I just want to tip my hat as a nod to what was said earlier about our triennial exit. We received our federal level training from Joe Jaron, the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Finance and Budget from the U.S. Department of Transportation, and went on a rabbit hole down budgeting, planning, finance, audit, oversight, federal allocations, and formula grants authorized and regulated under 49 U.S.C. 5337, otherwise known as 5337 grants, which are really important to RTD right now. It's about 24% of our total budget. And all that it takes to make that happen. So to my beloved staff that does all of the procurement, all of the grant writing, and especially the follow-up, which is the key component where a lot of agencies, we were told and taught, make mistakes. We're not doing that, and I am really grateful to you for all of that. I also want to give a special thank you to Pat Garcia, RTD graphic designer, for the beautiful Pride Bus t-shirts that allowed us to have an inaugural entrance into the 50th anniversary of Pride celebration this year in Denver, Colorado. And I am absolutely in love with that bus. The moment I saw the design, I started crying, especially if anybody remembers last June. I left a very defeated director and community member, but this year I was proud, as I always am, to walk next to our RTD buses with our directors, with our staff, in full color and in full display, right down Colfax, with a special bus driven by our very own Austin Ward, one of our operators, and many other members of our staff. But Pat, you did a great job on that design, and I love, love, love it. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary. Director Tisdale.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. As some of you may recall, General Manager CEO Johnson and I serve on the board of the American Public Transportation Foundation, which is the philanthropic educational support arm of the American Public Transportation Association, and I chair the Marketing and Communications Committee on APTF. And just to give you a heads up that we are going to work hard to help get the story out about what the American Public Transportation Foundation does and how it supports students to get involved in transit, because they are our future. And then also to thank the directors who are coming to the Transit Board members, Transit Board Administrators Seminar in San Jose in about 3 weeks. And we're looking forward to having a good crowd there and having everybody profit from that experience. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Director Tisdale. Director Ruscia.
Thank you, sir. I attended the APTA Rail Conference. It was a wonderful experience. It's a technical conference, so I might have been the only board or current board member that was in attendance. It's very large. I might have missed someone, but I just wanted to note that a lot of staff from our peer agency said how surprised but pleased they were to see a board at a conference like that, particularly in the breakout sessions about safety, new technology, TAMP, PTAP, et cetera, pending FTA rules. And so I just wanted to encourage my fellow board members to, if you haven't attended a more, quote, technical conference with APTA, get on board. It was really great. It was really one of the best experiences I've had as a board member. So I just wanted to share that back. Additionally, I also volunteered. APTA also has like an accessibility committee. And they were pretty wonderful in providing accommodations when they could. And I saw an opportunity to give back. And so I will be joining that effort and hopes to make our APTA conferences even more accessible and welcoming to all who wish to attend. Additionally, I attended several community meetings, I won't list them all, talking about, Vision Zero and efforts with fellow directors and community members, as well as to the best of my ability, and I appreciate dialogue from staff to give me more information, talking about our upcoming potential service changes. And so again, if other directors are doing the same in their communities, I would encourage them to reach out to the board office who can talk to service planning if you have specific questions. I was able to get some answered before an R&O meeting, and I got a lot of really positive feedback from community members, that we were able to give that level of detail for transit, which is very important to their lives and that they depend on. So thank you very much, and thank you staff for your support.
Thank you, Director Rusha. Not seeing other hands raised. Thank you, everybody, for your reports. We'll move into other matters. Are there other matters to discuss? Second Vice Chair Geisinger.
As I do every year, I like to remind our transit fans tomorrow is Bike to Work Day. Director Harwick will be at the Civic Center at 5:30 a.m. for breakfast. Breakfast stations all over. If you get a chance late tonight or early tomorrow, go online and register with Dr. Cog, because that's how they keep track and measure success. I also was just reminded that Boulder Chamber and Boulder Transportation Connections also came out urging us yesterday to endorse or to refer the ballot measure in TABOR to the ballot. So we did that. Thanks.
Thank you, Second Vice Chair Geisinger. Any further other matters? Director Broom?
Thank you, Chair. I wonder if we could have a brief explanation of the smoking wires on our overhead catenary system. There was an article in the paper today.
General Manager and CEO Johnson, is there, and I see.
Yes, thank you
AGM
very
Dave
kindly.
Jensen.
Mr. Jensen will speak to that as it relates to the causal factor.
Thank you for joining us, AGM Jensen. Floor is yours.
Good evening. I'm Dave Jensen, AGM of Rail Operations. What happened was it was a lightning arrestor that essentially was doing its job, became disconnected, started to spark, so we shut power down and repaired it.
So this happens occasionally?
It happens very occasionally, or actually very rarely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jensen, for joining us. Thank you, Director Broom. Any other matters? All right, seeing none, thank you very much, everybody. We'll now move to our executive session portion. In a moment, the board will meet in executive session to receive legal advice on compliance with Colorado's Fair Campaign Practices Act. I would like to append the motion to move into executive session to state that the board meeting will be deemed adjourned after it adjourns into executive session. For public transparency, this means that once the board moves into executive session, the main meeting will be adjourned. I will now entertain a motion to move into executive, June, thank you. I will now entertain a motion to move into the executive session to discuss the following. Pursuant to Section 24. Folks. If I could have some quiet, please. I will now entertain a motion to move into executive session to discuss the following. Pursuant to Section 24-6-402 4B CRS, to receive legal advice on compliance with Colorado's Fair Campaign Practices Act and the Federal Hatch Act in advance of the 2024 election. Second. Mayor Busick and Tisdale. Any opposed? All right. Oh. First Vice Chair Catlin. Are you opposed?
No, I apologize, but I don't see a link to go into executive session, or are we staying in this room?
We'll have the board office reach out, First Vice Chair Catlin, in just a moment. We're going to take a break. Again, I'll just ask, are there any opposed? Seeing none, we will move into executive session. We're going to take a break here. We will reconvene in 15 minutes. So we'll reconvene at 7:56. We will start the executive session, and if the board office could please reach out to First Vice Chair Catlin, we'll get you squared away. Thank you.
Thank you.
Still here? Okay. Is the executive session?